I'm Walter Cronkite, and this is an almost forgotten war, a guerrilla war the communists lost and the anti-communists won. It was lost and won in the steamy jungles of Malaya. It was fought by offensive rules laid down by an expert, Mao Zedong of China, and by new rules discovered by the defenders. Its history could be a military manual, how to fight a guerrilla war. In 1945, the Malay Peninsula has 9 separate states. Jungle clothes its mountain backbone like the hair of a tiger. Only the seacoast and river bottoms are developed. Slightly less than 1.5 million people are Malays, easygoing farmers, civil servants, the clannish original settlers of the land. Almost as many are Chinese, merchants, laborers. There are deep religious, economic, and language differences between Malay and Chinese. Indians form a large minority, and there's a small group of Europeans. Rubber, largely grown by European and Chinese planters, helps give Malaya the second highest living standard in Asia. The peninsula is a major source of the world's tin. The British rule this rich area, not by conquest, but by request of the local sultans. Malaya also dominates the main Pacific trade routes. The British are just restoring order after World War II, when out of the jungles comes a force of communist guerrillas, killing and burning. The irony is that the British had trained and armed this force, mostly Chinese, to fight Japan. The first targets of the guerrillas are European-owned plantations and tin mines. Workers, executives, and their families move inside compounds. For 12 years, English, Dutch, and Chinese estate managers will live with guns in their hands and lights burning through the night. 10% of all European managers will be murdered. The terror has begun. The British start with the advantage of strong administrative control and a loyal bureaucracy, largely Malay. They register the population and impose strict curfews. Britain's Labour government sends Sir Henry Gurney to Malaya. He comes, he says, not just to quell a revolt, but to win the minds and hearts of the people. And in fact, Malays are rallying to a special constabulary force, taking the Queen's shilling, a traditional British enlistment bonus. Thus, although the guerrillas try to use a pan-Malay nationalism as a cover for their communism, this propaganda is a failure. Britain transfers troops from Hong Kong and sends the men who usually guard the palaces of London. The Coldstream Guards, the Scots Guards, the Grenadier Guards. Australians are brought in. In addition to these conventional forces, the British organize a ferret force of men with guerrilla experience from World War II. They are to penetrate the jungle, meet the enemy on his own ground. The helicopter becomes a weapon. According to Mao Zedong, the guerrillas are the fish in a sea, the sea being the people and the land that support them. In these terms, the helicopter becomes a fishing boat, hovering over the fishermen who hunt the guerrillas. The guerrillas are hard to find, although the jungle hides large camps in which a so-called Malay Races Liberation Army is training. A few are hardcore communists. Many are merely inspired by Chinese, not Malayan nationalism. Very many have simply been recruited by terror. course, has a grimly amusing handicap. A planter, his rubber trees blasted, sues for damages. So the RAF must avoid bombing rubber trees. The guerrillas learn this, and every plantation on the map becomes a potential bomb shelter for them. Build up and all, the war is still going badly in 1950 when Sir Harold Briggs arrives to direct operations. His plan will soon counter the guerrilla strategy that comes direct from Mao Zedong. First, Briggs moves the sea in which the guerrillas have been swimming. This sea is 500,000 Chinese who have settled illegally between the jungles and the settled parts of Malaya. They are poor and hungry for land. In mixed terror and sympathy for the guerrillas, they reluctantly provide the communists with food, money, and a flow of recruits. Briggs establishes these people in newly built villages, largely by persuasion, partly with threats. Among the people moved are countless Minuan, literally in Chinese, the helpers, the secret communist fifth column. A gap is thus opened between the guerrillas in the jungle and their sea. The plan brings many to the villages who help the guerrillas only through fear, but it also offers social services, education, and legal ownership of land. An alienated and unstable segment of the population is thus offered its first taste of citizenship in a modern state. Above all, the plan promises safety, but the security forces must prove to these people that they can protect them, that the guerrillas will not come back and murder them for defecting. Building new villages is more expensive than merely hunting down men, and more than 500 new villages will be built. People who once lay sick and bitter on the edge of the jungle now get care. Chinese, Indians, and Malays are coaxed into cooperating. The races live together, eat together. Food, however, is strictly controlled, not because it is scarce, but to cut off the guerrilla food supply. Each person gets what he needs to live on, with nothing left over for the Minuan to smuggle to the jungle. Yet the communists still exact a secret tax, sometimes just a cigarette package of rice per day per person passed through the barbed wire. Collected, this is a substantial hoard, but it must be moved over roads controlled by the security forces. Steadily, the guerrillas get less and less rice. On the military side, Briggs orders his forces to press into the jungle, hunting in small patrols, inviting attack. Hard up for food and willing helpers, the guerrillas break up into small groups, are more elusive, but make more frequent attacks. There are so many more incidents it appears that Briggs is losing his war. But almost for the first time, prisoners and defectors are coming from the guerrilla bands. The assassins lay in wait 26 hours, undetected and unbetrayed. The ambush murder in October 1951 of Sir Henry Gurney, who himself had come to win minds and hearts, is the guerrilla signal they have not yet lost this war. The force hunting the killers is called the largest ever gathered to unearth a tiny handful of bandits. But all it finds are a few illegal guns, 5 bodies in the jungle, and a notebook meticulously listing the traffic along the road that Gurney traveled. The security forces are growing, but there has been no quick victory, only endless preparation for it. Worn out, Briggs resigns. The European planters are demanding more action. The Briggs plan has borne fruit, but not fast enough. Nonetheless, support from the Malayan people is steadily growing. Knowing that there are sick, hungry, and disgusted guerrillas in the jungle, the security forces coax them to surrender. A voice plane cruises over the jungle, playing in Chinese a recording by the new British chief, Sir Gerald Templar, pledging good treatment. When murders occur, food is cut off. The people are given a chance to place secret information in sealed boxes, leading to the roundup of many terrorists, freeing the people still further from fear. As confidence and control grow in the villages, Templar sends more of his army forces deep into the jungle. Almost literally, the paratroops hop onto the backs of the hiding terrorists. And they will go not simply as hit-and-run anti-guerrillas, but to establish permanent forts accessible only by air. The Reds never succeed in taking over a settled region in which they can show the people an ability to govern, make a show of fulfilling propaganda promises, or rest and feed their troops systematically. To do this, as the Viet Cong do in Vietnam, is an essential of communist guerrilla strategy. In Malaya, they have only the jungle, and now the security forces are in the heart of their jungle. What help the guerrillas get comes from childlike aborigines long neglected by their governments. They have little understanding of the struggle, but quickly see the value of government protection and services, soon become valuable allies. Thus, the struggle for Malaya began with a communist drive to transform a colonial society by violence. By 1953, it is the British and their Malay hosts who are making the revolution and winning the war. But there are years of struggle ahead. The 20th century will continue after this message from your host, the Prudential Insurance Company of America. It is 1953. A former British military governor in Germany, General Sir Gerald Templar, is slowly bringing peace to Malaya. Templar travels, offering protection and reforms to soften the control he places on the people. By September 1953, Templar declares a part of the state of Malacca free of terrorism for the first time in 5 years. Nonetheless, the communists still have many supporters. They are far from through. In Malaya at that time was a man deeply involved in the successful New Villages program. Later, he was involved in the less successful Strategic Hamlets program in Vietnam. CBS News correspondent Dan Rather asked former Malaya Defense Secretary Sir Robert Thompson this question. What was the communist answer to the New Villages program?
The communist answer to this is that they try and retain their penetration of the villages. And you have got to eliminate those agents and supporters from the village. Now, when the people realize that they can be protected, that the protection organization is working, then they are prepared to give information on who these supporters are, and the intelligence organization can eliminate them by either there's an operation as a result of which one or two of them may be killed, or they are arrested. It is absolutely vital, because this brings one on to one of the other what I call basic principles, that it is this underground political subversive organization using the weapons of terror and sabotage and so on, which must be broken before you can ever hope to defeat guerrilla units. If the political organization is not broken, then guerrilla units, I would almost say, can never be defeated.
What about the race problem in Malaysia? Did this contribute to your difficulties?
That was two-edged. Malay nationalism came out very definitely on the side of the government, and one of the reasons for that was that it was possible to identify the communist guerrilla movement in Malaya as an alien Chinese movement.
The guerrillas were primarily Chinese.
About 90% of them were Chinese.
Do you have in mind any distinct ratio, any superiority in numbers necessary to defeat guerrillas?
I think probably the critical ratio is somewhere in the 10 to 1, 12 to 1 mark. I think that you need that during the critical period of the campaign. We had a favorable government ratio during the critical period of about 10 to 1. After the insurgency was broken, and during the long period of mopping up afterwards, which took 6 or 7 years, the government ratio, of course, got better and better and went right up to 50 to 1 as you were able to recruit thousands and thousands of Home Guard without any problem at all. So there you've got that movement from a government ratio of 5 to 1 at the beginning of the emergency to 50 to 1 at the end of the emergency.
The British had promised Malaya self-rule as long ago as 1947. The first general elections are held in the new federation in 1954. The communist uprising has actually delayed the end of colonialism. Among the candidates, Abdul Rahman, a hereditary Tunku or prince of the state of Kedah. The emergency, the British never call it a war, still exists. But Malay, Indian, and non-communist Chinese have come through common danger to find common ground. The alliance is loose, complex, and shaky, but it elects a legislative council with Tunku Rahman as the chief minister of the new Federation of Malaya. The government seeks reconciliation. The communists seem ready to negotiate. In December 1955, Chin Peng, the guerrilla leader, comes in from the jungle under amnesty. Chin, trained during World War II by the British to fight Japan, before the emergency was scheduled to be decorated with the Order of the British Empire. The decoration was later revoked. Now the empire is the British Commonwealth, and Chin meets with Tunku Rahman, elected leader of a new democratic state on the verge of independence. What Rahman wants is a happy Malaya, he says, but for Chin there is no happy ending. Rahman offers rehabilitation to all guerrillas willing to accept the new government, repatriation to communist China for those who do not. Chin refuses to surrender his arms and demands the Communist Party be permitted unrestrained political activity. Turned down, Chin goes back to the jungle to keep fighting. By now, authorities have photographs of almost every guerrilla and know where to find him. This information comes largely from communists who surrender. British forces remain to continue the fight alongside Federation of Malaya troops and police. By 1956, almost half of the country is free of terror. Chin Peng is never taken or known to be killed. He and a small force are presumed to be still in the jungle today and still waiting. That he has failed and that the Mao Zedong strategy has failed this time is attributed to Malaya's New Villages program, with social and political reforms which steal the communist thunder and cut the communist fish off from their sea. This same strategy was later tried in Vietnam. Sir Robert Thompson.
How were you able to do this in Malaysia and not in Vietnam?
Well, I think in Malaya, possibly, we were fortunate in that we did not have the forces to undertake a policy of this nature too rapidly all over the country at the same time. In Vietnam, the government at the beginning of the insurgency had a considerable superiority of force, and there was a temptation as a result to try and do this much too fast, and to do it in too scattered a fashion all over the countryside. In Malaya, we were forced, as a result of our fairly limited resources, to take the country sort of block by block.
You think it was a mistake in Vietnam, trying to do too much too soon, not moving one block at a time?
You just do it village by village, you'll end up with a situation like we did in Vietnam, where each village is still insecure, it's still in the front line. If you do them in a large block, then the villages that are on the inside of the block are in a comparatively secure area, and that releases forces for you to go to push on the advance on your perimeter. But you must do it sort of stage by stage. And the other point that I would stress is that the hold aspect of the operation can take months. It takes a long time to build up confidence within the village that you can protect it, and also to build up confidence in the people themselves that they can take part in that defense with comparative safety, and confidence too that the government is going to win. In other words, that the enemy is not going to retake the village in a few months, and that as a result of what they have done, they will then be killed. There is another point here, which comes back to one of the main differences between Malaya and Vietnam, and that is that as a result of the war in Indochina against the French, the Viet Minh War, the Viet Cong captured the nationalist movement. And not enough was done on the sort of psychological front to try and sort of divorce communism and nationalism. In Malaya, on the other hand, we were fortunate in that the Malay nationalist movement came out strongly on the side of the government and supported the government right through the emergency. That was a very vital factor.
Well, if the Viet Cong has captured the nationalistic label in South Vietnam, what are the chances of reversing this and our capturing that label?
Well, I think the chances basically are good, because if you look at the situation in Vietnam as it has developed over these 6 years, there is one thing that comes through all the time, and that is that the peasant does not want to be taken over by the communists. If the peasant had not been prepared to support the government, Vietnam would have been lost 4 years ago. During all this period, the government has been able to maintain forces 500,000 strong, of which only a very small percentage, about 20% in the army itself, are conscripts. The rest are volunteers.
Merdeka, independence, becomes a full reality in Malaya in 1957. In 1960, the emergency is declared ended after 12 years. Tunku Raman had the most telling footnote to how to fight a guerrilla war. He said, "During the last 3 years of the war, more roads were built, schools and hospitals started than in the last 3 generations. We gave the people more than the communists could ever hope to give."